Okay. Everyone, breathe. Okay. It's been a crazy week, a hectic week in the IU basketball world. Back on Monday, the Hoosiers and athletic director Scott Dolson fired Archie Miller from the head post as the leader of IU basketball's program. And two full days have passed, and we're now on day 3, I guess, of the official IU basketball coaching search. We're going to talk about where things are right now, our thoughts on the current hot candidates that people are talking about for the head coaching job, get into the NCAA tournament a little bit. The women's team is in the big dance, and we're going to dive into that and so much more here on episode 187 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simply want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage to IU sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Thursday, March 18th, 2021. I am your host, Nithin Christian. Here with me tonight is usual podcast co-host Matt Lukens. Matt, it's day 1 of the NCAA tournament, but I know all Hoosier fans want to talk about is who's going to take over as the next IU head coach.
That's fair. As tournament games have started in Assembly Hall, nonetheless. First game started between Texas Southern and
Mount St. Mary's. Going on right down the street. How weird is that?
Yeah, well, right down the street for you, it's like a 16-hour drive for me, but, who's talking about that anyways? I wish I was in Bloomington right now. It'd be fun to watch all the games in Assembly Hall, of course, especially with the likes of Texas Tech and Virginia playing their first-round games this weekend. So that should be a great time if you're in Bloomington. Try to see if you can't get down to Assembly Hall to catch a game or two. So, yeah, coaching search. Wow. It's been 2 days. We did the emergency podcast on Tuesday, I believe, or Monday. It's been Monday. All these days have molded into each other. It's been one long Monday since Archie was fired, but. Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to see where the coaching search leads, but interesting right now, Nithin, there's not a lot of links with a ton of people. Usually, I remember this 4 years ago, we were getting talks that name blank has heard from Indiana as a possibility. Yeah. The Jeff Goodmans of the world were tweeting out this coach hasn't heard. So far, we've only heard that people haven't heard from Indiana, which makes me think that it's a candidate that is, one, being obviously very hush-hush about he's heard about from Indiana, but two, is somebody that's outside the box for these national guys. The Rothsteins in the world are going to be reaching out to the people that they believe would have heard from Indiana, or they would have been hearing from their contacts. It has to be somebody that is not from that world. So it has to be either an former IU basketball player or Brad Stevens, right? It has to be somebody of that ilk where they're not really associated with the national college basketball writers, which is interesting because now you've sent this entire fan base of Indiana on a wild goose chase. So good job.
Yeah, and that's the thing, there are a couple names that seem to have taken their names out of the search, or it seemed like you said Indiana maybe wasn't interested. A couple of guys that come to mind, Steve Alford, looked like Nate Oates had made it pretty clear that he was going to stay at Alabama. Chris Beard seemed to be kind of in the same boat, especially because of the financial concerns. But otherwise, it definitely does feel like open season as far as the different options available. Of course, the main college basketball beat writers, they're all covering the NCAA tournament. Right. And so, unless there's any kind of news whatsoever, you're not going to hear much. Of course, remember when Indiana was last in this position 4 years ago, there were a few other prominent schools looking for a head coach. Ohio State was, Illinois was, Oklahoma State was as well. That competition isn't there anymore. Even a couple of the options that you would think maybe is close to India, Iowa State went out and picked their guy. Penn State, another Big Ten school, filled their coaching position back on Monday too. So
a good hire, by the way.
Micah Shrewsbury.
Yeah, very good hire for them. Yeah. So
Micah Shrewsbury, the former Boston Celtics assistant, Brad Stevens' confidant, also Purdue assistant, now the coach of the Nittany Lions. But yeah, the dust has settled a bit. We slept on it for a couple of days. I think it's interesting. We've heard absolutely nothing from Archie Miller himself since Monday. No statements on social media, no video that's been sent to any sort of big news stations or things like that. It's been radio silence from Archie Miller. Like, for example, to give you something else, Richard Pitino from Minnesota posted out a very touching, humbling video on social media after Minnesota fired him on Monday night. We haven't seen anything like that from Archie. And also noteworthy, in a day and age where literally over 600 players have transferred so far in the world of college basketball since the season has ended for a variety of reasons, no Indiana Hoosier, except for Al Durham, has officially announced he's moving on from IU. And that doesn't mean we won't get any news in the coming days or weeks, but in this initial rush of literally hundreds of players leaving their program, you go look at Penn State, for example, a number of their starters left, even though they made a really good hire at head coach. A couple of key Minnesota players left their program, even though the Gophers seem to be like a young developing team. Nothing from this Indiana Hoosier team. It seems like there have been some words from players like Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway that said they are going to stay on board with this Indiana Hoosier program. They committed to the school more than the coach in these situations. But I don't know, Matt. I think it's somewhat encouraging for Hoosier fans that, as far as we know, Al Durham is the only player that has left. And even before Indiana dismissed Archie Miller, it seemed like that's the direction things were going.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Al was done, and I think this is for Al, I'm done unless I get a ridiculous offer to play somewhere, right? Like, unless Tom Crean, who recruited me originally to go to Indiana, to go home to Georgia and play one last year, and get a graduate degree, like that would make a lot of sense for Al. He's just kind of done, and unless he gets something that he really would appreciate or thought he wouldn't get originally. So I appreciate Al for everything he did. That's great. But yeah, no, seriously, like this off season so far has gone almost perfectly, which scares me because normally,
how dare you?
Because normally things don't end up going perfectly in the off season. So we will take it. But yeah, let's move on to some of the coaching candidates, right? So Beard, right, is probably one of the names that should come up. His Texas Tech team is playing in Assembly Hall this weekend. Yeah. There's been pictures of Texas Tech's team practicing in Assembly Hall's court right in front of the banners, and people are like, "Where's Chris Beard? Oh, he must be checking out his new office," which I find hilarious, but also like there's a hint of truth to that, right? Like we are going to eventually offer Beard the job, I would assume, unless another candidate, aka Brad Stevens, ends up walking through the door. Will that happen? I don't know. I don't know about you, Nithin, but I listen to, so Titus and Tate is like a national basketball podcast.
But I don't listen to it. I have heard of it though.
It's very good. I highly recommend it. Mark Titus, again, former Ohio State walk-on, IU fan, just all-around good guy. They did an emergency podcast last night on the state of Indiana basketball and basically went after all the national writers for saying there's no chance that Brad Stevens was coming to Indiana. And Mark's point in the podcast was that you don't know anything. Like, you know nothing. Like, you sit there in your East Coast house and you just assume that everything is supposed to be centered around the NBA or you just go and get the best coach possible in college, whatever. When Mark was talking about it was like, counterpoint, Indiana is home, right? So it doesn't matter that it's not the NBA, it's home. He has family connections. And Brad Stevens' wife went to IU. His dad went to IU. Happy wife, happy life. Like, there's a certain truth to that where you look at what he's been doing and how his life has been going and the season's been going in Boston comparatively to how it could be going in Indiana and Bloomington, where it's kind of home. And so there's a drawback to that. And Mark's point was that if they offered to pay him really good money, like IU is going to, the commitment is there from the university to pay good money. Why wouldn't he want to go back home? You get to be home and get paid really nicely to be home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And to me, like, I understand that. Right? Like, I went to IU and I'm back here working in Florida, which is home. But if somebody were to ask me to go back to work at IU and pay me a little bit more money, I'd take that in a heartbeat. Like, I'd be back there in a minute. I love Bloomington. Like, I made a home there when I was there for the 4 years I was in college. It's something that's, pretty like universal across the Indiana fan base, that Bloomington is home. And even like the Indiana basketball fan base, right? Like, you grow up in Indiana, you grow up liking basketball. I don't have to lecture you guys about this, but it's really like a key point in all of this, that the people that are telling you that it's a 0% chance never happening don't know anything. Okay. And they're acting macho because they think they do, but they don't.
Well, and this is the thing, right? I think back to when Stevens took the Celtics job. I think there were people who said there was a 0% chance he would have left Butler to take the Boston Celtics job. And then I remember all of a sudden it was a weekday afternoon, and the news broke on Twitter that that Stevens went to the Celtics, and people's jaws dropped to hit the ground in a minute. He said, "Really? This guy's going to leave a small college in Indianapolis to go coach in the NBA?" And it didn't make any sense. So yeah, I mean, on a related note, it's not like Stevens, who, by the way, he's not the only candidate by any means, but he's the top of the list guy. He didn't exactly do much the last 24 to 48 hours to put these rumors, and that's all they are right now, to rest. You catch interviews he does pregame with the Celtics media or the national basketball media before their games. You hear interviews he's done with radio in Boston, and it's not like he's jumping out of his seat to explicitly say he's going to be the next head coach in Indiana. No. But he's not exactly putting it to rest either. So let me ask you this, Matt. I think this is what Indiana fans want to know. Forget what Jack in Warsaw or Phil in Zionsville wants and types on social media. Forget about that.
Yeah.
How realistic, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how realistic is Brad Stevens as an option for the next IU basketball head coach?
I think it's like out of 10. I think it's like a 4 out of 10. I think it's a lot higher than people think so. I guess it's approaching 50-50 at this point. Like, if the Celtics season does take a turn for the worse, again, they lost to the Cavaliers last night.
It's already going there.
And I'm seeing on Twitter, thoughts about what is wrong with the Boston Celtics. Like a 12-page essay from the Boston Globe about what is wrong with the Celtics.
Yeah, I heard, like I need to say this. This is an analogy. Right now, Celtics fans feel about Brad Stevens the way a lot of IU fans felt about Archie Miller.
Exactly.
Up until Monday. I mean, it's scary to think that, but that's where things are right now. If you don't follow the NBA, it's a crazy analogy to think about.
Yeah, because Brad Stevens is one heck of a coach. Most fault lies on Danny Ainge. But Danny Ainge is not – the organization is tied to Danny Ainge. He's a former Celtic player himself. It'll be hard to get rid of him. The NBA is way different than college. For those of you that don't follow the NBA, in college, your coach is not only the coach, but the GM and the trainer, and hires the trainer and is the boss and the president of basketball operations. And in the NBA, the person that runs the organization is the GM or the president of basketball operations. There's a couple different ways teams have it structured, but that's basically the case. And they bring in a coach to coach the team. But the coach doesn't have a lot of say, and usually in player development, doesn't have a lot of say in personnel. They're just there to coach X's and O's and basically be a body in place, and sometimes be useful and sometimes not be useful and take the blame for no reason at all.
I think college coaches are sometimes dad and cheerleader too. Therapists.
Yeah.
as well.
Therapist,
Teacher,
cheerleader,
educator.
There's
like
the college coaches have so much to do where NBA coaches don't have as much, not even close. No. So in that way, NBA coaches are really dispensable. You can be replaced very easily. Like Brad Stevens could be replaced by, I don't know, let's just going to throw out a random name. Nick Nurse from the Toronto Raptors, right? Like it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to just randomly go get a coach off the street that could coach the Celtics, and they would probably do even better because sometimes change is good. But I don't think they wouldn't be better because Brad Stevens is a great basketball mind and knows what he got with that team. But
and it's just there's a very passionate fan base that the Celtics have, and it's obviously more likely. It's obviously more likely than not that someone else is the next head coach at Indiana. But you can't ignore this conversation, Matt. Let's talk about some other options, right? I know John Beeline, for example, is a very realistic candidate. We haven't heard anything official about Indiana pursuing this guy. We haven't heard anything official about Indiana pursuing anybody. But when you think of guys like John Beeline, Dane Fife, Rick Pitino, Calbert Chaney, Mike Boynton, perhaps the head coach at Oklahoma State, Thad Matta. I mean, when you think of these lists of possibilities, which one or two guys stand out to you, and have your opinions changed over the last couple of days?
I don't know if my opinions changed, other than originally at the beginning, like on the podcast on Monday, I thought Brad Stevens' availability was slim to none, and now I just think it's slim. I've removed the none. Other candidates that have like slid down to me is John Beeline. Like we had Ant Wright on, talked about it, he convinced me, and then the more I've thought about it, the more I've been like, he is 68. He's getting up there in age. He's a bit old. Do we want a guy that's going to, have the program in safe hands, but we know we're going to have to hire a new coach in 6 to 7 years?
I do. 100%. Here's why. Like, I understand Brad Stevens is the top of the list guy. I think John Beeline would still be, after thinking about it, after sleeping on it for a couple nights, I think Beeline would still be a really, really good option for this IU basketball team. You know what this Indiana fan base needs? This Indiana program needs? Stability. They need to quiet the frustrations. They need to quiet the complainers. They need to quiet the whiners. And a lot of it's been justified recently. But I think, look, it's college basketball. College basketball now is different than it was 50 years ago. A tenure nowadays, a coaching tenure, it's rarely more than 5 or 6 years. You don't see Coach K's or whoever any longer. It's very rare. Guys like Mark Few at Gonzaga, they're 1 in a million. All right. You could have a really good head coaching stretch and only be the guy for 5 or 6 years. Someone else will hire you. An NBA team will hire you. Another higher level college will go after you. And that's why I look at the Beeline thing and I say, look, even Brad Stevens might only be here for 5 or 6 years, or Dane Fife might only be here for 5 or 6 years. They may not be here for 30 or 40 seasons. And that's why when I see Beeline, I say, look, I understand he's 68, but he'll settle things down. He'll still have modern basketball ideas. It's not like he's going to be entrenched in 1970s stuff that we've seen the last 2 or 3 years. Even when he was the head coach at Michigan before he left for the NBA, he was a guy who was very he put a lot of emphasis on the 3-point shot. He put a lot of emphasis. He was a guy that was a cutting edge coach even until he left for the NBA. So when I look at the Beeline thing, I don't see many problems, if any problems, with him coming on board as the IU head coach.
See, I have a different view than you, Nithin. I view the John Beeline hire at IU as Flex Seal. That's what it is. You got a boat in Indiana, and we're sinking. And John Beeline is the Flex Seal tape. You just slap it on the underside, and we're not going to sink. It's a safe hire. Like, he's good. He's gonna fix the program. But at the end of the day, he's not a new boat, right? He's not a new boat. He's a stopgap. He's a pause in the bleeding, which is fine and enjoyable. And I will support him and I'll support the program if we go this route. But you have to understand at a certain point, Indiana has been on a downward trend for the last 20 years because of one thing and one thing only. And that was because the administration, after they fired Knight, didn't have the guts to go and hire a better coach. They just didn't. They wanted to stick with a Knight guy because it would please the fan base. That's the problem. That's the problem. Coach Knight came back last year. The Coach Knight era is done.
Over. Yeah.
It's over. The chapter is closed.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to go get another Knight guy. It's the same reason why Steve Alford took his name out of consideration for the job in the first place. Okay,
it was like in the first hour.
That was ridiculous. By the way, that was the funniest thing because he thought he was going to be considered for it. It's like, you know what? I appreciate the university like giving me a shot, but I'll take my name out of it. Like, yeah, okay, we were going to look at you like I know Jim in Bedford wanted you, but Jim isn't going to get what he wants there. But
yeah.
So looking at, we have to make the best possible hire now.
Yeah,
the money is there.
Yeah.
We're the only big job out there. We have all the time in the world. The program, we're not going to get players in this year in the new recruiting class that are going to make it a home run next year.
Yeah.
Trace probably isn't back next year. So even if we hire a coach right now, that's not going to change anything either. So when we're sitting here, take your time, make the best possible hire. If that is Beeline because there are no other people available, fine.
Yeah.
But I will take like 7 to 8 other coaches over Beeline.
Really interesting, because for me, it's Stevens 1, Beeline 2. Because this is a guy who knows the conference, and I think when you put all of it up there, he's to me a really appealing option.
But when I'm telling you 7 to 8 coaches, I'm talking like 7 to 8 of the best college basketball coaches available right now. And I mean, people that you don't think could even be possible. I want IU to reach out to
Tony
Bill Self. Tony Bennett. Like, just reach
Bill
out.
Self, yeah.
I'm not saying we're going to get them. I am saying you, as the athletic director, you contact Bill Self and go, Bill, you won at Illinois, you won at Kansas. I get your record's a bit sketchy. We will give you the entire Indiana Farm Bureau's insurance bank, okay, to come out here to Indiana. Like, that's the donor we have. We will pay you the bank. You just get to live in the vaults, and we'll just throw money in there, and we don't even know how much is in there. It just goes to you. Like, that's the point we're at now. Well, so if after all of that and all that pleading, the best we can get is Beeline, I'm fine with that because Beeline is good and he'll fix the program and it'll become a more attractive job to people 5 or 6 years down the road when we have some success and the pressure of you have to win in the next 3 years or whatever they're going to think is off the table. But right now, we have the money, we have the investment, we have the fan base, there's the availability. We're the only big job. Go and get a big fish. And if that's Brad Stevens, hallelujah. if it's Chris Beard, great. If it's Mark Few, the name you brought up earlier, amazing. If it's John Beeline, fine. That's okay to me.
Yeah, and there are a couple things that you talked about there in the last couple minutes. First of all, Trace Jackson Davis. We have not heard anything about his decision for next season. We don't know if he's going to move on to the next level. We don't know if he's going to return. There have been very little words from the There's been very little noise from the Jackson Davis camp about what Trace's next steps are. And then I do think this is a really critical aspect of this particular search. There is no rush. I mean, unless a guy like Roy Williams retires from North Carolina after the NCAA tournament is over, like Tom Izzo retires or Boeheim retires from Syracuse or something, Indiana's job is on a tier of its own. Indiana's job is much more superior than every one of the other college ones available. So IU can take their time about this. I'm sure Scott Dolson's aware of that, and he's going to take this one day at a time until he finds out who his next choice is as the IU men's basketball coach. Now, one thing I wanted to play with you, Maz, fun game here on the Hoosier Sound. I want to play a game of Flourish or Falter. All right? Flourish or Falter. And I'm just going to throw out some names that we've heard of over the course of the last couple of days. I'm going to ask you, do you think they're going to do a good job at Indiana, or do you think they're going to struggle? Do you think they're going to, flourish or falter? So let's go. Brad Stevens, flourish or falter, Matt?
Flourish. Easy.
Okay. How about John Beeline, flourish or falter?
Flourish.
I agree with you so far. Thad Matta, the former Ohio State basketball coach, how do you think he would do?
I think he would flourish. However, I think he has health issues. So the Thad Matta thing to me is a bit iffy.
I'm going falter with him. I think he would struggle to sort of adjust to the fan base specifically. If you have some of those 18 to 20 win seasons here, it could be kind of rough. Dane Fife, the current Michigan State assistant, Florin or Falter?
Falter.
Ooh,
I think.
I'm taking flourish with him. I actually like a lot of what I see with Dane Fife. Obviously, he wouldn't come in as sort of with any sort of major, high major conference coaching experience, but he's someone that I think knows what it's like to play here. He's obviously a fan of the 3-point shot. I think he would do a good job here, just if you ask me. All right, how about this one? Rick Pitino, flourish or falter?
Falter. I feel like he'd do an NCAA violation within 3 months of getting here and be out the door. So falter.
And that's fun. No, I agree with that. And this is the interesting thing, right? I was thinking the other day, Scott Dolson has a pretty big margin for error here. In other words, it's hard to be in a worse position than the Indiana program is now, unless you have a guy who comes in and commits a bunch of NCAA violations that ruins and tarnishes the reputation of the program more, especially on sort of a follow the rules level, right? You just so hard to get yourself clean of that after the Sampson era. It's definitely something to think about Dolson's decision. How about Calbert Chaney? I wanted to mention an Indiana guy, someone who has really built up a lot of experience in management and basketball management over the last few years. What about Calbert Chaney? Flourish or falter?
I'm going to say the same thing about all the Indiana guys. We don't have a Juwan Howard that's sitting there. All right. Juwan Howard was one of the top assistant coaches or assistant hires in the NBA. He was well regarded in the Miami Heat system. He was one of Spo's top assistants there under a really good head coach in Spoelstra. We don't really have that at Indiana. Mike Woodson might be the best example of an Indiana guy. So all of them, to me, would falter because you're going in not only with the expectation you need to win, but of the expectation of you're not Juwan Howard. You're not doing what he did with Michigan in the 2 years that he was there. So to me, that's putting a lot of extra pressure on that. That's the same thing with Dane Fife. It's the same thing with the rest of the
Woodson, guys. Michael Lewis at UCLA.
Michael Lewis.
Yeah.
I've heard names. Other names as well. So it's to me, you're putting them into a very hard position to win. Like it's just a very difficult situation. And if you want to give them all the money in the world to go get the best assistants and whatnot, sure, it's very risky though. So to me, it's too much risk. I think they would falter. They might have 1 or 2 good years and then things would kind of.
I think Calbert Chaney specifically, and I think you can actually lump in a lot of other guys except for Fife, in my opinion. Chaney, Michael Lewis, even Mike Woodson, I think would be A+ options as far as the top assistant on the bench. If you bring in a guy like Brad Stevens, I think Stevens should go out. His first call should be to a guy like Calbert Chaney. I think AJ Guyton would be a really nice assistant to have on the bench as well. I think these are options as far as assistant coaches.
Assistant coaches, 100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But head coaches, and I get, look, Indiana fans, I understand your want to have an IU guy. I get that. It's fun. It's a good story. Plus, you've seen it work in other places. It's very close to home, like Michigan, right? Mm-hmm. But we don't have that caliber of coach right now. It's just not happening. Maybe in 3 or 4 years that would be the case, but right now we don't.
Yeah, and maybe Chaney hangs up and says, "No way am I taking an assistant job." That's his prerogative, but that's how I would look at the situation right now. So obviously we're only a couple days into this, but wow, so many different options, so many different names being thrown out there. It's obviously going to be fun to follow until Scott Dolson makes that final decision. You can follow us over at Indiana HQ. We will be your one-stop shop for every update as far as the coaching search is concerned. You can follow us over on Twitter, like us over on Facebook. You bet we'll have you in the right hands. It's time for Who Won the Week in IU Sports this past weekend. This is a segment we usually reserve for the women's team, but we'll talk about them in a minute as far as their NCAA tournament. I want to give a shout out to Grant Richards, the superstar outfielder on the IU baseball team. He's a third-team preseason All-American. He had a walk-off home run against Penn State over the weekend. Back on Sunday, the Hoosiers swept the Nittany Lions in a 4-game series at Bart Kaufman Field. It was so great to walk by the venue back on a Saturday and Sunday over the weekend and just see that place back in action. Because remember, the baseball season for the most part was canceled last spring. So Richardson hit a walk-off home run. The Hoosiers are off to a 7-1 start, all against Big Ten opponents. They're on a 7-game winning streak after dropping their opener. Got a matchup or two with Purdue coming up here this week. A friendly reminder, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. And importantly, if you enjoyed our show, whether it's this one or the big one back on Monday, our bonus episode, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans. So, Matt, let's move on to the big dance. That's what's currently going on right down the street at Assembly Hall. It's the event that we're all going to thankfully tune into on a grand level starting on Friday. Venues and stadiums and arenas all around the state of Indiana. This bracket, Matt, when it was released on Sunday, I got nervous for the selection show. I don't know what it was. I knew Indiana wasn't going to make it. I was like, wow, we didn't have this last year. I was hearing Greg Gumbel's voice when he was going line by line down the bracket. I was going, oh my God, which team's going to get screwed? Which team's going to get a clean, easy path? As you look at the round of 64, which is on Friday and Saturday this year, Matt, let's get to the fun stuff. Which big-time teams are at risk of getting upset or tripped up in that first round?
Okay, these are my opinions, not the Hoosier Sounds. So you can come at me on Twitter. Handle's right here on the YouTube broadcast if you want to at me after my upsets lose. But on my bracket, the upsets that I have in the round of 64, starting in the West, I have Ohio beating Virginia in the first round. I love Ohio's guard. I think his name is Jason Preston. Really good junior point guard. I think given a week to prepare, Virginia's kind of been iffy all year in ranked games and important games. I like Ohio to give at least a close game to Virginia, if not beat Virginia. I don't know if a 10 seed is an upset over a 7, but VCU over Oregon in the West as well. Mm-hmm. That defense is crazy. Move across the bracket to the South. I have Winthrop over Villanova. Nice.
Okay. Very cool.
Villanova's missing Colin Gillespie. Mm-hmm. So I like Winthrop to win. I also, in another one of my brackets, I have 2 that are like my main ones. I have Colgate beating Arkansas.
Yeah, that's when a lot of people are excited about that game. Specifically, it's going to be crazy, fast-paced, first to 90.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game to watch. But Colgate over Arkansas is another one to look out for. Down to the east side of the bracket, Georgetown, Colorado's game to look out for. 12-5 matchup. Georgetown just won the Big East tournament. Colorado's been iffy all year. That bracket is super chalk, though. It's ridiculous. I hate that side of the bracket. Midwest region, again, not a ton, but another 10 seed over a 7 seed. Rutgers over Clemson. We saw Rutgers a bunch of times this Clemson team, again, like a lot of the ACC teams this year, really rocky when it comes to beating ranked teams. The ACC is not good. I don't know how they got so many teams in.
Yeah, they all got overseeded.
And ridiculously overseeded. Yeah, so I like Rutgers to beat Clemson there, and those are my first round upsets. Nithin, did I miss any?
Oh yeah. Oh, you did. Now here's the thing.
Okay.
There are a couple others that stood out to me as far as the round of 64. Okay, as far as this first round's concerned, I've got Santa Barbara beating Creighton. I think UCSB is an interesting team. It's a team that it's got some experience on it. Creighton to me has kind of been, they were dealing some off the court stuff. They were a little flimsy in the Big East tournament, losing to Georgetown. Looking at this squad, I'm going, I don't know. And it's a high-powered offensive team. I think UCSB matches up well against them. I also had Ohio, so that's my round of 32 over there. It's UCSB against Ohio. I have UCSB moving on to the Sweet 16. Otherwise, let's see, what else did I have in here? I also had the Rutgers one over Clemson. Otherwise, I think Utah State is a team that's a little finicky. They're a little feisty. Nimi Yaskita is a big man they've got inside that I think is going to give Texas Tech a few problems. Of course, there would be a fun storyline there, Chris Beard losing at Assembly Hall, and then the drama would start about, hey, is he thinking about this or that? Because that game specifically is being played in Bloomington. Otherwise, how about this? Ready? I've got these teams making the Sweet 16. UCSB is going to get there. Okay?
Wow.
They're going to get there because remember, that's the matchup against Ohio, right? Now, I also have Loyola getting to the Sweet 16, knocking off Illinois in the round of 32. And the third big one I've got making the Sweet 16 is San Diego State. I think they're going to romp past Syracuse and West Virginia to get to the Sweet 16. So at this point, Matt, let's cut straight to the chase. Instead of going pick by pick, who's your Final Four this year? What are the teams you're expecting to make it to the Final Four stage in Indianapolis? Who's going to win each region? Who you got?
This is a weirdly chalk bracket, but I got Gonzaga from the West winning. I think they're the clear favorites in that bracket. The only team I think that can upset them is Kansas. To be honest, they've improved since they played previously during the year. Baylor out of the South. Again, I don't see anybody beating them in that bracket. It's just going to be tough. And then Illinois out of the Midwest and out of the East, Alabama. So that's my Final Four. That's Gonzaga, Alabama, Baylor, Illinois. I don't have Illinois losing to Loyola Chicago because I'm not as crazy as Nithin.
Just wait.
I'm not as crazy as you.
Just wait.
Because I have Illinois winning the national championship.
Spoiler alert. Gotta keep the fans waiting, man. My gosh. I did forget one, by the way. I also have UConn making it to the Sweet 16. I got them tripping up Alabama. I don't know how I missed that when I went through this the first time. So my Final Four, Gonzaga, Ohio State, Houston, and Michigan. I think Ohio State's going to beat Baylor. I'm really confident in the Buckeyes this year. I think they showed me a lot in the Big Ten tournament. I was really concerned about them until the thing at Lucas Oil Stadium. I let them beat Purdue in overtime, beating Michigan. I said, okay, this team is, I know they lost to Illinois on Sunday, but I said, okay, this is a team that's kind of figured things out. And I kind of like their path, especially to the Sweet 16. I think Ohio State's first weekend will be pretty easy, so they don't have to really stress out until they face Arkansas and then Baylor. So I've got Ohio State making the Final Four. I think that's something that not too many people have. I also have Houston getting there because, like I said, Illinois gets tripped up early. I think Houston and Tennessee will face off in the Elite Eight. And then I've got Houston making it to the Final Four. So, Matt, you said Gonzaga was your winner.
No.
Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. You said Illinois was your winner.
Illinois was your winner. Over Gonzaga in the title game in a classic.
Yeah, I like Michigan's road here. And, I just keep looking at Gonzaga. And I know all of you, longtime IU fans have that number, have that stat in your mind. No team has gone the whole season undefeated since the 76 Hoosiers. I look at Gonzaga and I say, look, they're due to lose. I mean, this is a team that's played in a soft conference all year. They crushed some teams in non-conference play. I get that. But I got Michigan beating Gonzaga in the Final Four. I've got Ohio State knocking off Houston in the Final And if Ohio State knocks off Baylor to get to the Final Four and then beating Houston in the Final Four, that means you've got round three of Michigan, Ohio State this year, the rubber game for the national title game, and I've got the Michigan Wolverines coming out on top. I know Isaiah Livers is an injury concern, but I think even if he doesn't play, I was so impressed with what I saw with Michigan during the regular season, overcoming their COVID situation. I think Juwan Howard is a fantastic head coach. I think he's one of the best head coaches in the country. And I just think Gonzaga's due to lose. You know, it's hard to go the whole season undefeated. We saw it with Kentucky a few years ago. I think you're going to see the same thing with Gonzaga. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, I have Gonzaga winning in one of my brackets, and it irks me. And the other one, I have Illinois beating them. I had to put one because I think Gonzaga is by far and away the favorites. I think they're the most complete team, let's be honest, in this tournament. I think they're the best team.
Yeah.
By far.
They are.
But they're due. And it's so hard to go undefeated. And the Indiana fan of me can't stand the fact that the tournament is in Indiana. We're not in the tournament. We're without a coach. And there's a team that could possibly go undefeated. The last time the tournament was in Indiana, it was in Indiana. The Final Four was in Indiana. They had an undefeated team there too. That was in Kentucky. That would have been worse. Oh my God! If we had lost the undefeated record to Kentucky, I think I would have lost it. But Gonzaga, I mean, I'd be mad.
You can sad, digest a little more,
but I'd be okay. And then the copium would come in where we would be like, they play in a nothing conference. They don't play anybody for half the year. We could live with that because then we'd be like the last Power 5 conference team to go undefeated. We could just change the banner.
Sure. I love it. Yeah, I mean, let's just put a wrap to the March Madness segment on this. I can't wait. I mean, look, there's a 100% chance that everything I said here was going to be incorrect. So we're going to just buckle up and watch the ride unfold here. I really missed this tournament last season. Thankfully, due to everyone doing their part, we're going to at least get to watch some basketball games coming up. So far, none of these games have been canceled. Some of the players have tested positive, but none of the games have been canceled. Hopefully it stays that way for the rest of the next few weeks. Matt, it's time for a social media shout out. I know there was something you saw as far as, this Brad Stevens stuff. I know what crossed your mind. What did you see as far as interesting stuff over on social media recently?
So my social media shout out goes to the people that made me laugh the other night. And that is basically everybody on IU Twitter that has gone under all the Boston Celtics Twitter accounts, changed their profile pictures, and are tweeting "Fire Brad Stevens." To all of you, you get a gold Matt meme award. That's what you get. You literally made me. I was sitting at my desk in a voice chat with my friends over Zoom, and I'm sitting here crying with laughter because I see the Crimson Core has tweeted their Twitter account to #1 Boston fan with like the Celtics and the Bruins and the Red Sox, and they're tweeting under NBC Boston, "Fire Brad Stevens." Like, that stuff is perfect. I love that. So shout out to Hoosier fans. You guys are hilarious. However, don't do it. And this weekend's the last time you can do it. After this weekend, it becomes really weird. Don't do that. But until this weekend, through this weekend, go ahead, do it. It's hilarious. I think it's the funniest thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, props to Hoosier fans for using social media and cutting edge technology to change people's minds to let Brad Stevens know that he's desperately wanted here. And look, on our end of things, our bonus podcast on Monday afternoon set a new record as far as viewership on our YouTube channel. Obviously, it was a hot topic. Not even a couple hours after Indiana decided to dismiss Archie Miller. Head over to the Hoosier Sound. We welcome all our new subscribers who are finally listening to us for the first time. We're going to stick with you all the rest of the way, after the NCAA tournament, during the off season, going into football, and then whoever takes over his first season at Indiana as far as basketball coach is concerned. So head over to the Hoosier Sound. the Hoosier Sound on YouTube. Hit subscribe, like our videos. Come join us when we record live. Otherwise, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. We have a video download as usual. It's Apple Podcasts or Spreaker or wherever you get your podcast. So we appreciate all of you who tuned in and helped us reach a new milestone. Really appreciate it. Make sure you head over to watch our podcast or listen to it if you haven't yet. We gave our instant reactions to Indiana moving on from Archie Miller. It was crazy. It was intense. But where else would we rather be? We wanted to wrap up tonight with a positive story. I mean, forget speculation. Reality has set in as far as this Indiana women's basketball team, who continues to set new milestones. The Hoosiers are in the NCAA tournament. That's our selection show where they said Indiana in the bracket. Well, the women's team did that. They got a 4 seed. They're facing VCU on Monday at 2 Eastern on ESPNU. The 4 seed is the highest ever ranking that the women's team has obtained. And look, Matt, this is an IU basketball team that in a women's season that has shown more parity this year, Indiana could go on a little bit of a run. What stands out to you as far as the spot that IU's in is their 7th ever tournament appearance. They're looking for just their 4th win in program history, but that shows exactly what kind of heights this team has achieved. What do you see when you look at the IU portion of this women's bracket?
Yeah, so we're a 4 seed, which means if we make it to the Sweet 16, we are slated to play the number 1 seed in our bracket. I think IU will get there. We played VCU in the first round. Not the men's side, the women's side. They are not known for the crazy defense that VCU normally plays. I like IU to beat them. We would play Gonzaga, not the men's version of Gonzaga. They're not going to see Drew Timme out there blocking shots. So I like IU to beat them as well. So that would mean we would play the winner of NC State, South Florida, or Washington State. NC State will make it out of that side of the bracket. So in the Sweet 16, we're looking to play NC State. I think NC State is the weakest of the 4-1 seeds. The 4-1 seeds in the women's game are South Carolina, UConn, Stanford, and NC State.
NC State, yeah.
The 3 previous mentioned, the South Carolina, UConn, Stanford, are 3 of the giants of the women's game. They are the blue bloods. They're the ones that are going to win or be there in the end. NC State, however, really good story this year, has a good program going there. I think they're very beatable. I could see IU win that game against NC State. I like that side of the bracket. They would probably play the 2 seed eventually, which would be Texas A&M. On the other side of the bracket, I think they're very beatable as well. And so there's a very good chance these Lady Hoosiers could end up in the Final Four because of the bracket they're in. I really like their bracket. I think they have a really good shot at making the Final Four this year, Nithin.
And that's what you talk about, right? That's what you discuss when you talk about the NCAA tournament. Yeah, it's like step 1 is get in. Step 1 is make it. And then step 2 is, hey, maybe you get a favorable bounce here or there. And Indiana could have been in UConn's section or in Stanford's section, but they weren't. They were in NC State's section. And NC State's a really good team. They've had a number 1 ranking at various points of the season, but you don't have to worry about them until, but you don't have to worry about them unless you make the Final Four. Those other teams, you do have to worry about NC State in the Sweet 16. You avoided a team like Louisville, for example. They're a really good squad. You're going to have to worry about them. And VCU and Gonzaga, they're good. They're not great. Gonzaga's a team that has been in the top 20 here. If you look at some of the advanced stats, Indiana does seem to have the edge over Gonzaga in that matchup. So get to know these players: Allie Packberg, Grace Berger, Mackenzie Holmes. These are players who finally, besides some of them are on the team a couple years ago, finally get to realize the fruits of their labor since the start of last season, the 2018-19 season. I'm sorry, the 2019-20 season, where the Hoosiers were once again really good. They got the rug pulled off from underneath them because the NCAA tournament got canceled. Well, they're going to finally get their shot at tournament play. The entire thing's going to happen in Texas. The Hoosiers' first game takes place at the UTSA Arena, Texas San Antonio Arena. TV, time, and I believe venue as well have not been determined for the round of 32 yet. If the Hoosiers make it to the round of 32, everything moves to San Antonio, and you go on from there. So this is must-see TV. Get to a TV, get to your phone, your laptop, whatever, your tablet. Turn on the Hoosiers. Watch them on Monday when they take, because especially in a year where a lot of the top teams have lost, this IU program could go on a little bit of a run. So, Matt, once you sit back and take a deep breath and absorb everything that we've talked about tonight, what stands out to you? What are your closing thoughts on this Thursday evening heading into the NCAA tournament? We've talked about the coaching search, talked about March Madness, the women's team. What are your closing thoughts tonight?
Yeah, women's team, excited for it. To have a team in the NCAA tournament. I know we're all disappointed the men's didn't make it, but we should be equally excited if the women's made it. They're having such a good season. They got a 4 seeds. Really good. It's a better seeding than the men's had in 2016. So this is the best basketball team we've had in a while in Indiana, and it just happens to be the women. That's great. You look at the coaching hire. I feel like I'm like, I've been dating the same girl for a while. There's a little bit of some personal news, but like I haven't felt like I've been single in a while.
I see.
This feels like I'm single again. With we're out on the market looking for a new girlfriend, a new partner, as some might say, and with these coaches, and I feel like Brad Stevens is like the childhood best friend that you grew up with that moved away and went to a rival school, and timing didn't work out the last time you were single, but now maybe there's a chance. So there's some weird. I'm feeling flirtatious with Brad Stevens. One might say.
A little frisky, a little crazy on a Thursday.
A little crazy.
A little crazy
up here.
You have to close you have to, keep the kids away for this party. So
I have kids now.
Look, when it's all said and done, the coaching search is crazy. And I just was thinking the other day, like on Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember when it was, but I was sitting back and I was saying, whoever comes in as the next head coach, it can't be as bad as what just went through. No. Besides the thing with the AA violations, you pretty much can only go up from here. And I know this could very well be looked back on in 10 years. Like, this guy was an idiot. Indiana's a 5-win basketball team now, but it's hard to regress further from where IU is right now. So as someone who has occasionally, let's put rarely interacted with Scott Dolson around the halls of Memorial Stadium or seeing him carry himself at Assembly Hall, I do have confidence that he's going to make the right choice. I think we're going to look. It's weird. It's strange. Yeah. I'm not all that stressed out. Like, I'm interested to see who it is. Don't get me wrong. And we've talked about this now for 53 minutes. But I guess we talked about it for like 30, and then we talked about other stuff after that. But a lot of these candidates are interesting. A lot of these candidates are realistic. And I'm obviously intrigued at who Dolson picks, but I'm confident as someone who knows the Indiana program, who knows what the IU fans is about, as someone who was in varsity club and managing that for the years he was at before taking over as athletic director. I have faith in Scott Dolson, and I think Hoosier fans listening to our podcast, or those who don't listen to our podcast, should have faith in him as well. But that about wraps it up for our 187th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You're all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find everything in one place. Folks, I know it's exciting. It's Indiana team looking for a head basketball coach, but as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Come on, bro.